table saw is probably the most important tool in your shop. It is extremely versatile, but it's also extremely dangerous. There's a lot to learn about how to set up a table saw to make good, clean, accurate cuts, and just as importantly, how to use it safely. Throughout this video, we're going to be talking a lot about tool setup and tool safety. But remember, we're only covering the very basics. There's a lot to learn, and once you learn what to do, you have to discipline yourself to always do it. One point to remember when working with tools, especially power tools, is to never use them when you're extremely tired, when you're in a big hurry, or when you're angry. That's when most accidents occur. Also, teach people to never interrupt you when you're making a cut. That moment of distraction could result in a serious injury. Anytime you're working around the blade, make sure the saw is completely safe. The best way to do this is to reach over, pull the plug. Then you're absolutely sure that that saw cannot start. The blade of the table saw can be tilted up to 45 degrees to the left in order to make angled cuts. However, most of the cuts that you want to make will be 90 degrees, square with the top of the table. To change the tilt of the blade, I adjust this knob right here. And you can see the blade starting to stand up straight. This knob adjusts the height of the blade from fully below the surface to about 3 inches up. Now, since I can adjust the tilt of the blade, I need to check to make sure it's square with the top of the table every time I use it. To do that, I'll run the blade all the way up to the top and then check it with a square. Uh-oh, that's not very square, so let's adjust it a little bit more. Okay, that's much better. Now, that'd be an awful lot of blade sticking up there. I don't want any more blade showing than really needs to be. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to lower that down so that the top of the blade is only about 1/2 inch to 3/4 of an inch above the top of the wood. That'd be a lot safer down at that level. The table saw has a fence similar to the jointer, which can be moved closer or further away from the blade. We're going to take the straight side that we created with the jointer, and we're going to place that against the fence. And then we're going to move the fence closer to the blade so it just touches like that. I'm going to lock the fence down in position, and now I'm going to flip the board around. When I flip the board around, I have to make sure that it's also going to cut off wood at this end also. One thing that's very important with a table saw is to make sure that your fence is completely parallel to the blade. What we got to do here is to check the distance from the front of the blade to the fence, about 3.5 inches, and then I'll check it here on the back, and in this case it is exactly parallel. The distance from here to here and from here to here is the same in both cases. If it's not, you'd have to loosen your fence and adjust it this way until it is the same. I have the main guard for the blade removed, so you can see in the video how I'm setting up the machine. But in real life, you don't want that blade guard removed. I do have what is called a riving knife right here, which is a very good safety item on modern saws. What the riving knife does is that as the board is coming through, sometimes it wants to pinch on the back of the blade. And the blade is spinning forward, so if it pinches on the back of the blade, it will hurl the wood back at you. So the riving knife keeps the two pieces of wood separate so they can't pinch on the blade. However, most of the time you want the whole blade guard in place. So I'm going to take this riving knife out and reinstall the main guard. As you can see, the main guard also has a riving knife, but it also has a lot of other important features. One of them is these kickback pawls right here that I'll show you in a minute. This machine has a very nice guard system. First of all, both sides of the blade are covered by the side guards. Now, of course, I would never work with my hands this close to the blade, even with that guard in place. But it keeps anything from getting into the blade by accident. So as the wood goes past the blade like that, it goes underneath these kickback pawls, so that if all of a sudden the blade caught the wood and tried to fling it backwards, the kickback pawls dig into the wood and won't let it go backwards. So this table saw has an excellent guard system. However, even the best guard system is going to be in your way, and it's going to be a nuisance. But you need to discipline yourself to use it anyway. There's no job that's worth losing a finger or a hand over. And just like safety glasses and hearing protection, they don't do you a bit of good if you don't use them. So discipline yourself to use them, and make sure all the people around you also use them. Alright, so now I have my fence adjusted properly, blade guards in place. Better put on my hearing protection. And I have my push stick ready for the final push through. So let's get cutting. The cut that we just made that went lengthwise down the wood is called a ripping cut. Now we need to take this long board and cut it into 3 boards that are about 2 feet long each. When I cut across the board this way, that's called a cross cut. I have another part to the table saw here called a miter. Now the miter can also be adjusted for different kinds of angles, just like the blade can. So you have to make sure that it's exactly square when you want to use it. So what I'll do is I'll check this miter against a known square, and yes, it is very square. So the miter goes into this T-track on the tabletop. Make sure all the dust is blown out of it. And then we'll hold the wood against the miter and feed it through the saw. Now normally, to make accurate cuts, I would trim the end off the wood, measure the cut that I want, make the cut. Then from that cut line, I'd make the next measurement and then cut it in that spot. In this case, it doesn't really matter. I just want to cut it into 3 pieces. So I'm just going to make a mark here at 2 foot. Slide it down, make another mark at 4 feet. Take this square, this is a framing square, and it has a little rim right here that fits over the edge of the wood. So just take that, mark it off, do the same thing on this one, like that. And I'm going to slide it up here right next to the blade. Now I want to make sure that the wood is held tightly against the miter, because you can see if it's not going to be square. Now I can take the wood and push it right up against the blade, and I can see that that blade is going to be cutting just a little bit off that line. Pull it back now, and don't forget to put the guards back down. And now we'll make our first cross cut.